Hi, I'm John Madison. In this session, we're going to go over the environment that I use for development. It's going to be a CentOS Linux, and it's set up on a SSD, so it's pretty fast. And it's got like 2 or 4 gigs of RAM. It's a virtual machine, so it can be adjustable. And sometimes I boost it up to like 16 gigs of RAM if I'm doing a lot of processing in memory. So the development tools I use is Postgresql, MySQL WorkBench, and I use those to connect to external or separate database servers. And then of course Eclipse and NetBeans, and not related to any of the stuff I'm doing here now, but also Visual Studio on Windows environment. But this is a Linux setup, so let's begin. I'm using Hyper-V for my virtualization platform on Windows 8.1, and I like it. So I'm going through the new virtual machine wizard, so I'll go ahead and put in a virtual machine name, and then CentOS only works with generation 1. I'll select the RAM, 4 gigs is cool, and then every virtual machine needs a internet connection, so selecting the disk, just leaving it as 127 gigabyte disk drive size, and then of course selecting an ISO, and this is a 6.3 CentOS. So it will do its thing, create its disk. I put this on a SSD so that it could be fast, not only for this recording, but who wants to work off a slow machine? 8 CPUs, of course. We already know that a lot of the development that is going to happen will be using concurrency, so it'll be using more than one CPU core. And then a little trick with Hyper-V, if you set it as a default and not shut down for powers, then it will actually start caching the all of the stuff that's in memory onto disk. So like on my SSD, I'll have a 4 gig file that will just be for the memory. Now that's cool if I'm doing that kind of stuff, but I start up like 8 machines and it just fills up the SSD, so no thanks. I disable it by just having it shut down when the host is shutting down. The installer has started, and just skip, I know that ISO is fine. I've used it 100 times, so I don't need to verify anything. It'll do its little media thing, and then get to the install screen. For the install of CentOS, it's pretty straightforward. It's a GUI-based install, so it's a matter of clicking Next, and then selecting your language, all that stuff. Yes, discard any data. Put in your machine host name, and then I like to set my network options during the install, just so I don't have to try to mess with it after the machine is installed. This saves time for me. So I'll go ahead and put in my IP address and all that stuff. If you hear a clacking in the background, there's a predator loose in the neighborhood, and it makes that sound when it's hunting one of my neighbors. So we're going to go ahead and select the location. I'm in LA area, and I use a simple password for my dev environments just because I don't want to type in a long password each time, no reason. For partition options, I like to review and usually modify the partition options. I'm going to modify swap first to something low. If I end up swapping to this, I'll just add more memory to the virtual machine. That means I don't have enough if I'm swapping. Simple as that. I find that 10 gigs is enough for me to do Dropbox and code files, whatever. And then for my system drive on a DevBox, I will go all the way up to 512 gigabytes. But that will leave space for all the database files, which can take up a couple hundred gigs pretty easily. So I'll click next. I'll go through the whole creating of the file systems. Just click next again. That's going to do the boot deal. And then we have a software development workstation. Yes, of course. That's going to install Java and some other packages for building stuff like C++ and other things. I like to start off with that as a base build for my dev environment. Okay, so it's done installing. We're going to reboot it. So now the menu is for the setting up the first user. We've already done root and the default root password, so I'm just adding myself in there. Yes, it's a weak password, I know. Go on, do that thing. Synchronize time. This is good on for a lot of different reasons. It will always keep the time synchronized even if the host gets a little slow or has some memory memory with the CMOS or something like that, some kind of battery issues. Whatever, it keeps it synced. Okay, so now the fun begins. I'll log on as my account. It's not a super admin account, but we will be doing a lot of work in the super user mode. So first thing I'll do is check the Java version just because I'm curious, and it's 1.7, so that's cool. Now I'm going into super user mode, and I'm going to do a yum -y upgrade. So if you don't know, -y just basically says yes to all of the prompts, and there could be quite a few of them. So it's going to update, or actually upgrade, all of the operating system files, all those packages. I'm also going to grab NetBeans. So you see that I started already going and finding NetBeans with the JDK. So NetBeans, when it installs, it will already know where the Java JDK is. So while that's downloading, I'm going to grab Eclipse too. I use Eclipse and I use NetBeans. It depends on what I'm working on, or if I'm working on a team. Most organizations will use most organizations will use Eclipse. It's kind of the standard. So, however, the tools are very similar. Java, of course, is the same, and it's really about some of the add-ons. I'm also going to grab MySQL WorkBench, and this is going to allow me to access databases on a separate MySQL server. So we're going to do Red Hat, Linux type packages, and I always grab the 64-bit versions. So I'll grab that. I'm downloading all of these ahead of time. The yum upgrade is still going in the background, and it will go for quite a few minutes. When it's done, I already have all this stuff downloaded and ready to roll. Some of the things I can install while the upgrade's taking place, just because it's Linux, and the way that the files are, they don't interfere with each other. Oh, Postgresql is another database, RMD, whatever, relational database management system. I always get the graphical installer from Enterprise DB. This gives me the graphical UI, but it also gives me the latest version. So as we know, CentOS kind of has a 1 or 2 versions behind. Or revisions behind, depending upon what the release is, just because it's more stable, so the updates are less frequent. So I'll grab that. I'm just going to go to my downloads folder and start installing some stuff that I can. I always change to the list view for the file browser just because icon view is such a waste of space. So first thing I'll do is change the mode for some of these files to be able to execute. I'm going to install NetBeans first, so it's going to do that. Lots of fun. So for NetBeans, JUnit's always handy. I just click the defaults for the JDK and for the NetBeans binaries, and it'll just do its thing. While this is going on, I'm gonna be a little multitasker and well, check out the upgrades. It's at 73, so that's cool. NetBeans is installing. I'll wait for this to get done installing until I start installing something else. My NetBeans is done installing, so I'll click finish, and let's see, what else can I install? How about Postgresql? I know that Postgres needs a super user to be able to install it, so I'll just switch to that mode, change the permissions, and start it up. For a pretty well designed database system and a management interface, I mean, this thing is rock solid. It is surprisingly small, and it doesn't take much time at all to install, like compared to Oracle or SQL Server. Granted, it has a much limited feature set, but just for a database, it really kicks some ass. Okay, so this is done. I would go into Stack Builder if I needed to put in some geolocation type functionality, which is actually more common than you think. So the next thing on the list is MySQL WorkBench. I'm going to install just a workbench. I'm not going to install the MySQL Server on this machine simply because I use a separate dedicated MySQL Server. That's actually the same with PostgreSQL, but since Postgres automatically installs the PG admin through that whole install, I'm fine with that. It really doesn't add a lot of space. So that's going to run in the background. I'm all done with this terminal, so I'm just going to exit super user mode and close it. Really what's left is the upgrade process, and Eclipse is still downloading. Eclipse is always slow to download. Well, that's running. I'm just going to test some of this stuff, see if pgadmin works. I'll just open up the local database instance, put in my password, all that jazz. Okay. And yeah, so what's cool about PostgreSQL, it's a little bit different. You got to go into databases and then schemas, and then you'll get to your tables, where the table space is. And it's the first time I opened this up without ever using PostgreSQL, I was like, where the hell do I add tables? And well, there it is. Now, NetBeans, they just got a new version out, 8.1, at the time that I made this video. I think it was a few weeks ago. So it's like April, the end of April 2014. So yes, that opens. That's cool. And looks like Eclipse is finally done downloading. I'm just going to extract that, and I always just add that to my user level on the file system, and then add a shortcut to the panel up on the top. I'm going to delete all these other files now. I don't need them, and since it is an SSD, kind of space is still limited. Looks like the cleanup process is cruising along in the background for the upgrade, so Once that is done, then I'm going to reboot the server. So the upgrade's complete. I'm going to reboot it and cross my fingers that it will start. That's a joke. CentOS pretty much always restarts. It's one of the most stable operating systems I've really ever worked on, and unless you're drunk or crazy, it's hard to mess up. Okay, back to the login, and now there's always some kind of message for a problem. I don't know what that is. I don't care. Everything seems to work okay. I need to install VNC Server. This resolution basically is not high enough, just straight out of Hyper-V. So I'll install VNC Server and then just use a VNC terminal window to access the server from basically anywhere. So it's going to do that. While that's going on, I actually have some instructions on a site that lets me just edit the VNC servers file. I can never remember where it's at. There's also a VNC password I need to set. Now this is for my John user, so that's why it says John at the machine. So type that in. That's cool. That's all I need for this window. Here's a couple preferences I like to set. One of it is the screensaver. For me, on a virtualized development machine, I don't really need one. So I'll just deactivate all that. And one important configuration is in the services. It's the firewall, which is the IP6 and IP tables. So this is on an intranet, and I don't need a firewall. So I don't need to add access to every little service I add later. It's a pain in the ass. So I'll basically disable those and then stop them. And then I'll also need to enable and start VNC Server. So I'll just scroll down until I find that, and then enable it and start it. Next, I need to add the users that are allowed to use the VNC server and then their resolutions. So I can use Nano or something like that, but since I'm in a GUI, I'm just going to use gedit so I can do all of that stuff I need to do, copy and paste very easily with the mouse. So by default, the servers are commented out, and then the server args. So that's kind of a key value pair. So it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many users you want in there, and then corresponding arguments for each one. So I just copy out, since everything else after geometry is not applicable to me, and I know that I'm adding 2 users, both John, but with different resolutions. So one is for my MacBook at 14, and then the full HD 1920 by 1080. So go ahead and save that, and then close it out, and then pretty much that's VNC. So I'll go ahead and reboot it to make sure that all the stuff is, all the services are disabled and enabled. You know, the ones that are should be no firewalls, and then of course VNC Server should start. So the machine is restarted, and I don't need to log in here anymore. I can log in with VNC Server. So I remembered the IP address I assigned to the machine, and notice the :2 after the IP address. That's that assignment that you gave for the arguments for user Then 3 is the full HD. So got to do that, and then looks like everything is working. So the next step is installing Chromium, and I'll just copy and paste some commands here. Basically, you need to just get into your repos directory and then download the repo info and then install it using a standard yum installer. So then I'll do the install command. This is going to download some files, and you know, if I did the -y switch, I wouldn't have to prompt. Maybe I need to add that command on that page. So it's going to do its download thing, and then pretty much once it's done installing, then it's installed. So I'm going to test the update to make sure that that still works. The reason why I tested that is to show that it works. Now, after I install Dropbox, that update command isn't going to work anymore. Just the way that the Dropbox repo file is added, it kind of messes stuff up. I don't know why. I don't care. I just remove it from the repo directory. And of course, you don't install this stuff on production. So now Dropbox is there, and Chromium is also there, and it's opening, so that is good. So as you've seen, we went through the whole setup process. I used a little bit of adjustments on the partitions just to give me a little bit more space on my home partition, and I left the system partition alone. I usually adjust that dramatically if I'm creating a machine that's larger, like 512 gigabytes of space. Then I'll adjust that so the system has at least almost about like 507 gigs. So if I'm probably using it for database, so that's why it takes a lot of space. And one of the things that I always do, well, I use Dropbox a lot to just exchange files back and forth across computers. It's automatically synced, so that's convenient. And then since I'm using a Hyper-V environment, and sometimes VirtualBox screws up the screen too, I always install a VNC Server. So then I just connect to it at whatever resolution I want. In this case, it's 1920 by 1080, and then I can see the whole screen, use my whole monitor, all the real estate, and do what I do. So that's kind of it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just post them.